in making your introduction. So this afternoon, let us now start with our first lesson for the midterm. No? So at the end of the session, 100% of you with 100% level of proficiency, meaning you will thoroughly understand to differentiate the general designs of research. So after you have made your introduction, you have made and formulated your statement of the problem right, the next major part of an APA format is entitled methods. Methods. So under methods, there are different parts. And before that, let us have a question. What do you think are the elements of methodology? That's the introduction. Your introduction, the 10 pages, answer the question, what is my problem? So you can answer that by enriching your introduction. Now, the next part, which is methodology, answer the question, how is my problem to be solved? How to solve my problem is your methodology. The how part. If you have already identified your problem in the introduction, your number 2 methodology will help you to answer your problem. How to answer the problem. So these are now, so what do you think are the elements of methodology? So you are right, Mr. Balyon. It includes measurement. It includes measurement. You can use meter stick if you can, if it is allowable for your study. You can use how to measure. You can use frequencies, counting those respondents that have said very good, counting the frequencies that will tell you not appropriate, something like that. So measurement is a part of how, answering the how. But more than that, these are now the elements of methodology. The first one, you have to choose what design are you going to use in your research to solve it. Now, like an engineer, the engineer has their blueprint, the teacher has their lesson plan, the researcher must have the design. The design is a blueprint on how to arrive at the answers to the posted questions. So the questions that you have already enumerated in your specific questions. Say for example, there are 3 specific questions. How to answer them is through the chosen design. It will be our discussion today. There are 2 major design. But it will not only be the element of method, but of course the participants. The participants or the subjects or the respondents of your study must be chosen. Who will be your subjects? Like for example, Mr. Balyon said that he will be looking into the effectiveness of radio broadcasting in the remote area. When you say remote area, far-flung places, are you referring to the parents, to the adults? Are you referring to the male, to the female? Are you referring to the professionals in the far-flung area? Are you referring to the farmers? So you have to delimit and clarify who will be your participants. So we will be discussing the difference between subjects and participants as we go on. Then the instrument of your study will also be a part of the elements of methods or methodology. You can use, say for example, physiological measures, like say for example in the when we speak about radio broadcasting, we are looking at the frequency how large is the frequency or how big is the frequency. So you can use the measurement or the tool to measure the frequency. And then you can also use, say for example, most often than not, you can use the interview schedule if you want to do an interview. But at this point in time that we are in the pandemic, your interview might not be so feasible. You can use the most popular one, which is survey instrument or the survey questionnaire, which can be through the social media because we are in the pandemic. So that's the about the instrument. And then of course, how you're going to treat your data is a part of the methods. So these are the four major things that you must understand and must be included in accomplishing the second part of your research, which is entitled methods. The design, the participants, respondents, ay the instrument of the study in the treatment of data. So let us now discuss design. Here you will see in your screen the two major designs. We have the two major designs, research designs. We have qualitative research design and we have quantitative research design. Now, to understand the two research design, I have the parameters to differentiate and to look into the similarities of the two designs. So we have in your first column the parameters, meaning these are now the basis or the criteria to see the differences between a qualitative and a quantitative design. Okay. So the first one is objective. What is the objective of qualitative design? And what is the objective of quantitative design? So you will see that the qualitative, its objective is to generate theories. So meaning, when you do a qualitative research, your title, Mr. Samuel, will you share your title?
Wait lang po sir, tingnan ko po. Ah, wait lang po sir,
Oo.
tingnan ko lang po.
Your
Hanapin
title,
ko lang po dito.
yeah,
Aha.
your title seems to be a qualitative research. When you do a qualitative research, its main objective is for you to
Generate theories.
generate theories. So meaning, after you have conducted your research, you can be a theorist. Your name will be like Socrates, will be like Brunner, no, will be like uh, Wilson, no, will be like Mayo on his pyramid of hierarchies of needs, because the Maslow's hierarchies of needs is a generated theory. Or you can be like Calvin, the theory of evolution. Evolution theory, the environmental theory of Nightingale, are all resulted from qualitative research, because qualitative research is made to generate a theory, while the quantitative research is to test a theory. So meaning there is already a theory, and then you are going to prove if the theory is still true, acceptable, or if it is rejected. We call that as quantitative research. So that's the difference between the two. Another one, when we speak about data, because when you go to the results, no, in your part 3 of your research, the results, you are going to present your data. Then your data will also be analyzed and then it will be interpreted. And in the chapter 4, or which is called the discussion, you are going to discuss the analysis of your data. Now, when we speak about data in qualitative, the data is represented by texts. You know what texts are? Nagte-text tayo, di ba? So texts are words. They are ideas. Data. In qualitative are texts. We call them as codes. We call them as themes. So you will understand codes and themes if you will do qualitative data. We will discuss that as we go on. Now, the quantitative data is numerical numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so on and so forth. Or scores, 10 points, 15 points, 100 points, something like that. Numerical, and most probably you are going to use statistical formula such as mean, such as average, percentage, or inferential statistics. You can use, say, for example, person product moment coefficient of correlation. You can use t-test, something like that, or other type inferential statistics such as ANOVA, Mankova, so on and so forth. So that's the difference between the two. Qualitative by words, quantitative by numbers. In your results, you are going to show, if you are qualitative, you will be using qualitative only words. But when you do quantitative, you can use numbers. So in the presentation of the data, you can use figures or you can use tables. Okay. Now, about in sample size. The result of the Pulse Asia survey or the SWS survey are results from the samples. Because if they are, say for example, the popularity rate of the president is 90%, it does not tell about the entire 90 million Filipinos, because it is impossible for them to ask the entire population. So what the SWS survey as well as the Pulse Asia survey will do will just get a sample. Say for example about 1,000, about 500. See? That about the sample size. Now, in your screen, you will see which has a smaller sample. So,
Qualitative po.
qualitative can be as small as one element. Pwedeng isa lang. It can be one person of an extraordinary character. Say, for example, you have a case study of a genius child. So, isa lang. You have a case study of a Duterte, only one president. That is qualitative. But in a quantitative, you need at least 30 elements. When we say elements, that's the persons, the smallest element. So at least 30. Because in a quantitative, we use a statistical formula, and usually a statistical formula are used for group data. And the smallest number of group members in a group is of course 30. So that's the smallest number for a quantitative. What's the form? The form of qualitative, it is mostly explanatory in nature. Meaning you have to explain why you arrive at a code. You have to explain why did you come up with a certain theme. Mostly explanation in nature. Also, before you explain, of course, you will do some analysis because you cannot explain without analyzing, even though they are mostly text. Now, in a quantitative, the forms are usually by descriptive and inferential. When we say descriptive, you are describing, say for example, the status. You describe the status. You describe the social media. Or you can do an inference. What does the answer of your respondents have, or what is its meaning is called the inferential. Okay, and then of course it is also conclusive. So this can be more discussed in clarity as we go on, but we are just summarizing the difference. The qualitative purpose to gain understanding of underlying reasons, opinions, and motivation. So you usually solicit the opinions as well as the opinions of your participants or how they feel about a certain issue. While in a quantitative, we are looking into the cause and effect that of course establishes patterns and trends. Why patterns and trends? There are patterns, there are trends because there are many participants, because there are 30 at least that you're going to ask about a certain question. So we can establish patterns, we can establish trends in 30 individuals. Qualitative is holistic, while quantitative is particularistic. When we say holistic, when you do a qualitative, you are looking into your participants or the topic as a whole. No, buo, whatever will come out based from the instrument, it will be discussed in the qualitative research. But in a quantitative, because you have already delimit it, you will concentrate only on the variables and in your sub-variables. You will just confine your discussion on what is written in the instrument. Okay? So we call that as particularistic. The particulars are already identified in your statement of the problem. While in a qualitative, there are no particulars. So, like what I have told you, Mr. Samuel, your actually, Mr. Symbol, by the way, your questions are more of a qualitative than a quantitative. The questions that you have enumerated are more of a qualitative than a quantitative because there is a different way how to formulate the question in a qualitative, in the formulate way of asking a question in a quantitative. The levels of questioning are mostly for quantitative. But when you will not enumerate variables, those are questions for qualitative. Okay? Then the approach for qualitative is more subjective. Subjective in nature. Why? Because whatever will be unearthed by your subject or by your participants, all of them will be written. It's up to the participant or to the subject to what he is going to tell. Kaya sinabi siyang subjective. It depends upon the participants. Yun usually, it also depends also the interpretation of the data in you as a researcher. So whatever your interpretation is as a researcher, it will be written in your paper. That is called subjective. While in a quantitative, it is more objective. Why objective? Because you have your variables, you have everything enumerated in the questionnaire if you are going to use a questionnaire, and you will not interpret it according to how you did understand it, but you will interpret it scientifically using the statistical formula. So using statistics will hinder you to be subjective. You use statistics to make it objective because numbers are more objective than texts. Next, reasoning. Qualitative is more inductive. What is inductive? The from the details, you are going to generalize. From the details, from everything that you will do, you are going to generalize and form a theory. While in a quantitative, you are already have a theory, and then from the theory, you are going to analyze. We call it deductive. Minus, from a whole, you discuss one by one, we call it quantitative. That is deductive. The opposite of it, mula sa parts, and you're going to combine them and do a generalization, a theory will be formed. So that is called inductive. Sampling method for qualitative is purposive. So meaning you don't have to use any scientific sampling because it is purposive. It's up to you who you will choose to be your participants. Say, for example, you want to have those people who want to really who wanted to participate in your research. So that is about purposing. If your purpose is, of course, to look into the performance of the president, so your purpose is, of course, make the president as your participant. But in a quantitative, it is more random. Anybody can join. Okay? Qualitative is process-oriented, while quantitative is result-oriented. Because a qualitative is more difficult to do because you have to be very careful of the process that you're going to make in order to arrive with the result. While a quantitative is you are just looking at the result based from the formula, and that's it. That is quantitative. Now, the methods of data gathering in qualitative can be interview, but mostly they are unstructured. So meaning, the interviewer in a qualitative research must be an experienced person because he cannot new or a neophyte individual who will conduct an interview will of course have a structured interview, and that happens in a quantitative. So a qualitative research is usually done by an experienced researcher, by an experienced interviewer, by an experienced person, while a quantitative can be done by a neophyte researcher because everything is written, everything is structured. When you use a questionnaire, you use a structured questionnaire wherein all answers are already written in the questionnaire. Now, your participants or the respondent, all they have to do is to check. While in a qualitative, the answers are coming from the respondents. Share Jesus.
Subscribe and
Subscribe and
share
share
Harapet
Harapet TV.
TV.
Go, go, go.